I've been a tour guide at Yellowstone National Park for 3 seasons now, and I thought I knew everything about this place. The thermal features, the wildlife patterns, the best spots for photos. I had it all memorized. I could recite facts about Old Faithful in my sleep. Hell, I probably have. My name is Tyler, and up until 2 weeks ago, I had the best job in the world. It was a Tuesday morning in late August when things started feeling wrong. I was leading my usual 9 o'clock tour to Old Faithful, a group of about 15 tourists trailing behind me as I delivered my well-worn spiel about geothermal activity and eruption schedules. The sun was bright, the sky that perfect Wyoming blue that makes you feel like you're standing on top of the world. Old Faithful erupts approximately every 90 minutes, I told the crowd, gesturing toward the famous geyser. It's one of the most predictable geographical features on Earth. You could set your watch by it. The crowd murmured appreciatively. I'd given this exact tour hundreds of times, and I loved it every single time. There's something magical about watching people experience Yellowstone for the first time, seeing their faces light up when the geyser shoots 180 feet into the air. I noticed a family standing near the front, Dad with a camera, Mum wrangling 2 kids who looked about 6 and 9. Standard tourist family, the kind I saw dozens of every day. Now, if everyone could gather here, I continued, we'll have about 5 minutes before the next eruption. Perfect time for questions. A hand shot up. The usual stuff. How hot is the water? Has anyone ever fallen in? Do bears really come this close to the boardwalk? I answered on autopilot, my attention drifting back to that family. The dad was lining everyone up for a photo. Mum, 2 kids, and I blinked. There were 3 kids now, 2 boys and a girl, the girl standing perfectly still between her brothers. She looked about 8, wearing a white dress that seemed weirdly formal for a Yellowstone visit. I frowned, counting again. 4 people, just 4. Mom, Dad, 2 boys, no girl. You okay, Tyler? Someone asked. I shook my head, forcing a smile. Yeah, sorry. Long morning. Now, Old Faithful should erupt in about 2 minutes, so cameras ready. The geyser went off right on schedule, and I watched the tourists applaud and take their photos. The family looked happy, normal. 4 people. I must have miscounted the first time, or maybe my eyes were playing tricks. I'd been doing a lot of early morning tours lately. After the crowd dispersed, I headed back to the visitor center where my friend Brian was restocking brochures. Brian was in his 50s, weathered and lean, with the kind of face that suggested he'd spent more time outdoors than in. He'd been guiding at Yellowstone for 15 years, longer than anyone else I knew. Hey, I said, grabbing a bottle of water from behind the desk. You ever have days where things just feel off? Brian looked up, and something flickered across his face. Off how? I don't know. Like I'm not paying attention properly. Seeing things wrong. He was quiet for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. You ever notice how the park feels different lately? He finally asked. Different. Just different. He went back to his brochures, and I could tell the conversation was over. I brushed it off. Brian had always been a bit dramatic, prone to talking about the spirit of the park and how you had to respect the land. Hippie stuff, basically, though I'd never say that to his face. The rest of the day passed normally. I led 2 more tours, answered the same questions, made the same jokes. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. The next day, I was scheduled for the Grand Prismatic Spring Trail. It's one of my favorite tours. The spring is absolutely stunning. This massive pool of rainbow-colored water that looks like something from another planet. Blues and greens in the center, oranges and reds around the edges, all caused by different heat-loving bacteria. It's the kind of thing that makes you believe in magic. I checked my watch as we started down the boardwalk. 2:15. The Grand Prismatic Spring is the largest hot spring in the United States. I began falling into my rhythm. And the 3rd largest in the world. It's about 370 feet in diameter and 160 feet deep. I walked them through the viewing area, pointing out the different colors, explaining the science. The tourists asked their questions, took their photos. Standard tour. Maybe 20 minutes, start to finish. When I checked my watch again, it read 4:30. I stared at the numbers, convinced I was misreading them. But no, 4:30. 2 hours and 15 minutes had passed. "Excuse me," I said to the group, pulling out my phone. Maybe my watch had died. Maybe. My phone showed the same time, 4:30. "Is everything all right?" asked a woman in the front. "Yeah, I looked around at the tourists. They seemed unbothered, chatting amongst themselves, admiring the view. Did that feel like 2 hours to you guys?" They looked at me blankly. "The tour," I pressed. "We started at 2:15. It's now 4:30. "Seems about right," said a man with a thick beard. "We got here around 2, walked down, listened to your talk. Standard tour." But it wasn't. It couldn't be. The tour was 20 minutes long, 30 at most. I'd done it 1,000 times. "Right," I said weakly. "Sorry, must be the heat getting to me." I led them back to the parking lot, my mind racing. 2 hours. Where had 2 hours gone? That evening, I found Brian sitting alone in the empty visitor center, staring at a map of the park spread across the desk. The overhead lights made harsh shadows on his face. "Brian," I said, "something weird happened today." He didn't look up. "Tell me." I explained about the missing time, about how the tour had felt like 20 minutes, but somehow 2 hours had passed. As I spoke, I watched his shoulders tense. "You believe me, right?" I asked. "I'm not going crazy." "You're not crazy," Brian said quietly. He finally looked up at me, and his eyes were hollow. "I've been seeing things too. People who don't belong, trails that shouldn't exist." I pulled up a chair. "What are you talking about?" 3 weeks ago, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I led a sunrise tour. We left at 5:30, headed up to Hayden Valley for the wildlife watching. But the sun never fully rose, Tyler. Everything stayed in this weird twilight, this gray half-light, for hours. I kept checking my watch, kept waiting for full daylight, but it never came. Maybe it was overcast." It wasn't overcast. The sky was clear. And when I brought the tourists back, they all claimed they'd seen a normal sunrise. Beautiful, they said. When I asked them to show me their photos, the pictures showed normal sunrise colors, oranges and reds and golds. But I swear to God, Tyler, I remember only grey. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm evening. Why didn't you tell anyone? Who would believe me? The tourists had proof, photos, witnesses, all saying I was wrong. He rubbed his face. I've been keeping quiet, trying to convince myself I imagined it. But then other things started happening. Small things, wrong things. Like what? Trails that appear and disappear, animals that move wrong, and the people. He stopped, shaking his head. You're going to think I'm insane. Try me. The woman in the yellow jacket, he said. You've seen her, right? My blood went cold. The tourist? Middle-aged, always asking questions about the geysers? That's her. How many times have you seen her? I don't know, maybe twice, 3 times? I've seen her 27 times, Brian said. 27 times in the last 3 weeks, always doing the exact same thing. Same jacket, same camera, same questions, always alone. And Tyler, I've never seen her arrive or leave. She's just there. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was confused, that lots of tourists look similar. But I couldn't, because I had seen her multiple times. And now that Brian mentioned it, she did always seem to be doing the same thing. The park is changing, Brian said. Or maybe it's changed us. I don't know anymore. I left the visitor center feeling worse than when I'd entered. That night, I barely slept. And when I did, I dreamed of geysers erupting in perfect silence, of trails that led in circles, of tourists with blurred faces who asked the same questions over and over. 3 days later, I saw her. The woman in the yellow jacket. I was leading an afternoon hike to Ferry Falls, taking a group of 8 tourists along the trail. It was a beautiful day, warm and clear, and I was trying to shake off the unease that had been following me since my conversation with Brian. That's when I spotted her up ahead, stopped on the trail, photographing something in the trees. My stomach dropped. Everyone, let's take a 5-minute break here, I told my group. There's a nice view of the meadow if you walk about 20 feet that way. As they dispersed, I approached the woman. Up close, she looked completely normal. Mid-40s, pleasant face, expensive camera hanging around her neck. Excuse me, I said. Have we met before? She turned, smiled. I don't think so. Why? You just look familiar. Have you been to Yellowstone before? First time, she said brightly. It's even more beautiful than the pictures. What brings you here? Oh, you know. Always wanted to see the geysers, the wildlife, typical tourist stuff. She laughed, and it was a perfectly pleasant laugh, but something about it made my skin crawl. Are you here with family? I pressed. Traveling alone. I prefer it that way. You can move at your own pace, you know. Every answer felt scripted, rehearsed, like she was reading from a prompt. Well, enjoy your visit, I said, backing away. Oh, I will, she replied. I always do. I rejoined my group, but I couldn't stop glancing back. The woman stood there for another minute, then wandered further down the trail. I watched until she disappeared around a bend. 2 hours later, after I'd finished the tour and returned to the parking lot, I saw her again. Same yellow jacket, same camera, photographing the same trees. No, not the same trees. We were miles from where I'd seen her before, and there was no way she could have circled back in the time it took us to complete the hike. That evening, I saw her near the visitor center, just standing there, looking at a map. 3 times in one day. No, more than that. I'd seen her on at least 2 previous tours, maybe more. How many times had I noticed that yellow jacket without really registering it? I pulled out my phone and took a picture of her from a distance. I'm not sure why. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. When I looked at the photo later, she appeared completely normal. A tourist at Yellowstone. Nothing strange about her at all, except I couldn't shake the feeling that she was always going to be there, doing the same thing forever. The next morning, I arrived early for my shift and found a note in my mailbox. Night patrol tonight. You and Cole. Report to ranger station at 10 o'clock. I'd never done a night patrol before. They were rare, usually only called when there were reports of problem wildlife or suspicious activity in the campsites. But I wasn't going to question it. Maybe a night in the park would help clear my head. Cole was a ranger I'd worked with a few times, a quiet guy in his 30s who took his job very seriously. When I met him at the station that night, he was all business. We've had some reports of strange noises near Norris Geyser Basin, he explained as we loaded into his truck. Campers have been complaining, probably just elk, but we need to check it out. The park was different at night, darker, obviously, but also quieter in a way that felt oppressive. Our headlights cut through the blackness, and I found myself watching the trees, half expecting to see that woman in the yellow jacket standing among them. We reached Norris around 11:30. Cole parked, and we started walking the boardwalk with our flashlights, checking for any signs of wildlife or damage. That's when I heard it. A low rumble, then a hiss of steam. One of the geysers was erupting. Steamboat? Cole asked, checking his map. No, that's not... I stopped, because it wasn't just one geyser. It was all of them. Every geyser in the basin erupted simultaneously, shooting water and steam into the night sky. The sound was deafening, and the air filled with mist that glowed white in our flashlight beams. What the hell? Cole breathed. We stood there, frozen, as the geysers continued their synchronized display. And then, just as suddenly as they'd started, they stopped. Silence. We waited. 5 minutes passed. Then they all erupted again, every single one at exactly the same time. This isn't natural, I said. My voice sounded small in the darkness. No, Cole agreed. It's not. We watched through 3 more cycles, each exactly 5 minutes apart, the geysers erupting in perfect synchronization, like they were being controlled by some unseen timer. Do you hear that? Cole asked, suddenly. I listened. Under the sound of water and steam, there was something else, a whispering. No, multiple whispers, layered on top of each other. Hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, all murmuring the same thing. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Warning. We should go, I said. But Cole wasn't moving. He was staring past the geysers, toward the tree line. There's a light over there. I followed his gaze. He was right. A faint yellow glow was visible through the trees, maybe a quarter mile away. That's where the old ranger station is, Cole said. the condemned one. Then why are the lights on? We looked at each other. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in the truck and leave, but Cole was already walking toward the light, and I couldn't let him go alone. The ranger station was a small wooden building that had been closed for years, supposedly due to structural issues. But the door was open, and warm light spilled out into the darkness. Cole reached it first, pushing the door wider. "Hello. Anyone here?" No answer. We stepped inside. The place looked like it had been abandoned mid-shift. Papers scattered across the desk, a coffee mug still sitting on a filing cabinet, a jacket hanging on a hook. But everything was covered in dust, like no one had touched anything in decades. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, tacked up in neat rows, overlapping in places. All Yellowstone photos, geysers, landscapes, wildlife, and tourists. So many tourists. I moved closer, examining the pictures. There was something wrong with them, something that made my eyes hurt to look at too long. The people in the photos were blurred, their faces indistinct smears, or they were standing at angles that didn't make sense, their bodies twisted in impossible positions. In some photos, there were too many people, crowds of them packed into spaces that should have been empty. "Tyler," Cole said. His voice was tight. "Look at this." He was holding up a photo, and when I saw it, my heart stopped. It was my tour group, the one from last week, standing in front of Old Faithful. I recognized the family, the dad with the camera, the mom, the two kids. But there was something else in the photo. Behind the group, tall and perfectly still, was a figure. It was hard to make out details. The image was slightly out of focus, but I could see enough to know it was watching the camera. Watching with an intensity that made my hands shake. "I don't remember seeing anyone else there," I whispered. Cole was already flipping through other photos on the wall. "It's in all of them. Every single one." He was right. In every photo, somewhere in the background, was that same tall figure, sometimes distant, sometimes close, but always watching, always perfectly still. "We need to leave," I said. "Right now." But Cole had found something else. A logbook on the desk, thick and leather-bound. He opened it, and I saw pages and pages of handwriting. Different hands, different inks. "These are entries from guides," Cole said, flipping through. "Going back, Jesus, Tyler. These go back 50 years. He was right. The dates at the top of each entry ranged from the 1970s to just months ago, and every entry described the same things: missing time, repeating tourists, strange lights, geysers erupting in synchronization, all the things I'd been experiencing. Cole found an entry from Brian, dated 2 weeks ago. The grey morning was just the beginning. I see her everywhere now, the woman in yellow. And yesterday, I counted my tour group 3 times. First count, 12 people. Second count, 15. Third count, 12 again. Where did the 3 extras go? Or were they ever really there? My hands were trembling as Cole turned more pages. So many names I recognized. Other guides, rangers, people who worked at the park. All of them describing the same slow unraveling of reality. The last entry was from someone named Thomas, dated 6 months ago. It's not the park that's changing. It's us. The more we see, the less we belong to the world outside. I can feel it pulling at me, like roots growing into my mind. I tried to quit last week, tried to drive away, but I ended up back here. I don't think I can leave anymore. I don't think I want to. The park needs us. It needs witnesses. It needs people to see what it really is. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. They're all still here. Everyone who's ever really seen. We're part of it now. The entry stopped mid-sentence. I frantically flipped back through the book, looking for other names I knew. There, a guide who supposedly took a job in Colorado, but according to this, he never left. And another, a ranger who claimed she was moving to Oregon. Still here. They're all still here, Cole whispered. I turned to look at him, and my blood turned to ice. He was staring out the window. In the darkness outside, figures were standing around the building. Dozens of them, maybe more. They wore ranger uniforms, tour guide vests, park service jackets, all of them perfectly still. All of them watching the station with empty eyes. I recognized some of the faces. A guide who'd supposedly quit 2 years ago. A ranger who'd transferred to another park. People I'd been told were gone. They were all still here. Cole, I said slowly, we need to go. Now. But when I looked at him, he was still staring out the window, and his face had gone slack, expressionless. Cole. He didn't respond. I grabbed his arm, tried to pull him toward the door, but he wouldn't budge. He just kept staring at those figures, and I realized with horror that he was starting to smile. I ran. I left him there, and I ran, bursting out of the station and sprinting for the truck. The figures didn't move, didn't try to stop me. They just watched as I fumbled with the keys, started the engine, and peeled out onto the road. I drove toward the exit, toward the park boundary, toward escape. The road stretched out in front of me, empty and dark. I drove for an hour, the speedometer pushing 70, 80, 90, but the gate never got closer. I checked the odometer, watched the miles tick up, but the landscape never changed. The same trees, the same curves, the same stretches of road, over and over. Finally, I gave up. I turned around and drove back to the employee housing, my hands numb on the steering wheel. Brian was sitting on my porch. "You can't leave," he said simply. "None of us can." I slumped against my truck, too tired to be surprised. "How long have you known?" "I've tried 43 times, he said, not answering my question. 43 times I've driven for that gate. Sometimes I make it all the way to town before I blink and I'm back here. Sometimes I don't even make it out of the parking lot before the road turns back on itself. This can't be happening. But it is. Brian stood up, and in the dim porch light, he looked ancient, worn down to nothing. "We belong to the park now, Tyler. It showed us what it really is, and now we're part of it. Just like everyone else who saw too much. Cole Dash. We'll be fine. He'll show up for his shift tomorrow like nothing happened. And maybe he won't even remember tonight. Or maybe he will, and it won't matter because he can't leave either." I wanted to argue, to fight, to insist there had to be a way out. But I was so tired, so impossibly tired. "Get some sleep," Brian said. "You've got the morning tour tomorrow." He walked away, and I went inside my cabin. I didn't sleep. I just sat on my bed, watching the darkness outside my window. waiting for dawn. 2 weeks have passed since that night. I'm leading a tour right now, actually. Old Faithful, 9 o'clock group. 15 tourists hanging on my every word as I explain about geothermal activity and eruption schedules. Old Faithful erupts approximately every 90 minutes, I hear myself say. It's one of the most predictable geographical features on Earth. But I'm not really here. I'm watching myself from somewhere else, somewhere distant. My mouth moves, my hands gesture, but it all feels automatic, scripted. In the crowd, I see her, the woman in the yellow jacket, camera around her neck, smiling and nodding at everything I say. She's still here, still repeating the same routine, still trapped. I understand now. She was a guide too once, or a ranger, one of the people who saw too much and couldn't leave. And now she's part of the park's collection, a figure that appears and reappears, doing the same thing forever. They're all still here, everyone who really saw. And now I'm one of them. A new guide is starting today. Her name is Emma, bright-eyed and excited, fresh out of college. I'm supposed to show her around, teach her the trails, help her learn the ropes. She's waiting for me at the visitor center, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. "Tyler," she says when I approach, "I'm so excited to be here. I've wanted to work at Yellowstone since I was a kid. I want to warn her. I want to tell her to run, to leave while she still can, to never look too closely at the tourists or count them too carefully, or notice when trails appear that shouldn't exist. Instead, I hear myself say, 'You're going to love it here.' People never want to leave Yellowstone." We start walking, and I'm showing her around, pointing out the important buildings and trails. I'm talking, but the words feel hollow. Someone else's words. And then I notice it. Emma's shadow is wrong. It's moving a half-second too slow, like it's struggling to keep up with her body. It's already started. Behind us, barely visible in the tree line, I can see them. The figures, the others like me, like Brian, like Cole. All of us, watching and waiting for Emma to join the collection. I've been here 3 seasons, I think. Or has it been 30? I can't quite remember anymore. Time works differently here. Everything works differently here. The park is beautiful this time of year. The park is always beautiful. The park is patient. The park is forever. And I'm giving my 9 o'clock tour to Old Faithful tomorrow. Same as always. Same facts, same jokes, same crowds. Maybe I'll see you there. Just don't look too closely. Don't count the people in your group more than once. Don't notice when the trails change. And whatever you do, don't ask questions. The park doesn't like questions, but it loves answers. And once it answers you, once it shows you what it really is, you'll never leave. None of us do.